And quick reintroduction of the guests in case you're joining us now. In studio, I have Paddy Onyango, who's a governance consultant, Samuel Kimeu, who's an executive director, Transparency International, and also joining us from Kisumu via video is Kevin Osido, who is a governance expert. But before we continue with the conversation, we sampled some of your views from the counties, and this is what you had to say about how satisfied you are with the use of county funds.
Upande wangu kama youth activist nimefanya a lot of activity na vijana na community. Na feedbacks na reports nilizopata ni kwamba county government imefail in one side, mostly Kilifi County. Kivipi? Wana advertise tender, wanapena tenders, lakini ikifika time ya payment huwa kuna delays. So hizo delays zimeletea banks nyingi sana kutopeana mikopo kwa hawa watu wana supply tender. Sasa nikiweka huo mfano mzuri ni upande wa vijana. Kijana amejitolea kujisaidia, kujiinua kimaisha, kuinua community yake. Na umepewa tender, umeenda banko upewi pesa, umeenda youth fund upewi pesa. Kisa ni kwamba county government inachelewesha kupeana pesa.
The county funds they have not been used to maximum, to the level that we expect. Because we are aware that every financial year there's a lot of money that is taken to the county. And when you try to view, even in fact when you go back to the grassroots, you go and talk with the youth. Being a leader, sometimes I interact with the youth. You go back to the youth, now you go even to the women at the village. They are not the projects that are supposed to be run by youth. You find that there's money that are allocated for youth, but because the youth, maybe sometimes the county government complain that there are no organizations, these funds are not reaching the youth.
You should be given 30% of the tenders. And you find that this 30% of these tenders, they give them to the family. So it's as if it is a family issue. Are you getting that? Yeah. So actually, these funds, they ought to consider youth in all these things. If it is each ward, they ought to disburse and say, in this ward, we give these funds to this group, this youth group, different youth group from different wards. Are you getting that? Yeah, and that has not been done in our county.
Kidogo ni successful kidogo, lakini wakipewa fursa mzuri na wakipewa pesa mzuri ama wa manage pesa mzuri. Isipokuwa corruption. Na hii maneno mengine ya kupewa mradi ambayo huwezi kumaliza mradi. Naona wakipewa pesa mzuri watamaliza hizi miradi zao na hiyo sawa kabisa.
To improve the services. For example, if a patient is sick, he or she has got to hospital, he is told that there are no medicine, that he has to buy outside. So such service, the county government should look at it to make sure that there are enough medicines, the correct type of medicines in hospital for the sake of ordinary citizens.
Services hospitali zio nzuri za bando asijakamilika. Tabu tunaopata, unachukua mgonjwa unapeleka hospitali, alafu unalipia senti za kumuona daktari. Unakwenda pia unalipia za matibabu au kupimwa laboratory. Ukiandikiwa madawa ukienda unaambiwa hakuna hii. Hiyo ni tabu tunapata, maana wakati unapeleka mgonjwa unapeleka ili apate matibabu pale kila kitu.
Kulingana na vile pesa za county zinaenda, haturidhiki sana sababu maneno ile inaendelea hapa Nyeri sio ile tulikuwa tunatarajia, sababu tulikuwa tunataka maybe tujue mambo ya barabara, mambo ya wananchi, soko ilianziwa hapa Nyeri haijaisha, ilianziwa na the Richo Gachagua, the governor, lakini saa hii hata hatuoni vile inaendelea.
Sometimes ago, before the devolution came, those services mostly we would go to Nairobi so that we may get some of these simple services. But right now, they have been brought down to the people here where we are. For example, when it comes to things like the health services, the hospitals, most of the services were not there that time. But right now, you can go to PGH and find so many services like the cancer and the kidney. Yeah, they are there.
Nataka waje kwa wananchi tuwape mawaidha vile wataweza kusaidia na vile watu wa Nyeri wataweza saidika. Sababu hawezi kufanya kazi bila sisi. Mawaidha yetu sisi wananchi tuwaeleze mtaro hii ni mbaya, kuna watu wanasumbuka sana katika Nyeri, waje kwa wananchi watuulize maswali.
Wanatumia baya sana. Juu yao ni safari. Hata kama ni huyu governor, tunasikia kila siku anaenda wapi? Huko kwa Mtua. Anaenda kufanya nini?
All right, and those are some of your views on what you thought on devolution and how the county governments are performing. But coming back to studio, let me start with you, Paddy, on your thoughts on the fact that devolution, or rather corruption, is a big cancer that we have. Do you think devolution could be the biggest threat? Or rather, corruption could be the biggest threat to devolution?
It has always been a threat right from the beginning. First of all, I was a member of the task force on devolved government, which advised the government of Kenya on how to roll out the devolved system. The task force was established in October 2010 by the then Deputy Prime Minister for Local Government. And clearly, we got views from the Kenyan people exhaustively. It was a participatory process. And one of the things that came out clearly is that Kenyans were concerned about corruption being devolved. And what they wanted is there a way that this evil can stay at the national level? But if you look at corruption really, we need to look at it from a more holistic point of view. Corruption is about I, the individual. Within me, there are three forces. One, evil, the other, good, and the third one, the adjudicator. And this third one is the conscience that one has. So if you are a public official, you have been put in an office, a public office of trust to hold in trust, and then you allow the two forces, the evil, to conquer, and you get involved in corruption. It is an individual attribute. So yes, corruption is indeed a threat to devolution.
But having said that, don't you think that the government is there to ensure, because, I mean, if we take, for instance, any other crime other than corruption, the government is there to ensure that we live within the confines of the law. And as a result, if there was action taken against those who are corrupt, if it was taken as seriously as it should, and there was action taken and seen to be taken, then you're encouraged, as it were, to do good.
Yep. The problem, as it were now, is that we have a dual system of justice, criminal justice system, one protective of the corrupt rich, the other repressive of the majority poor. That chicken thief who snatches a cock, a jogo, worth 1,000 shillings. Justice will be very swift for that person.
And very harsh.
Very harsh, 10 years. Within 10 days. You have this politician, we have the NYS people, 1 billion. Even to arrest that person is a problem. He will buy his way out. So now the question is, why is it that the justice system is not functional when it comes to the rich and powerful? It is simple. The governance system in this country is captive to a cartel of corruption. And you need willpower from the top to ensure that justice is done.
When you say from the top, what exactly do you mean?
You know, we
say...
mean
the president?
We say, yes, you know, I'm always very blunt in this case. I will use, you know, I'm a culturalist, right? A fish rots from the head. So if the president is not able, does not demonstrate capacity and willingness to fight corruption, because some of his relatives are beneficiaries of corruption, if a minister is not able to rein in on corrupt officials because his relatives or he is a beneficiary by being a sleeping director in a company that is given tenders procedurally, right? Then we have a problem.
Okay.
That is what I mean.
All right, I'll come to you, Samuel Kimeu, in a bit, but let's cross over to Kevin Osido. And Kevin, as you attend the devolution conference in Kakamega, do you feel like corruption, one, has been addressed and has been given the importance that it should in that conference? Because there you have all the governors, you have the senators, you have basically the top, the creme or de la creme of leadership in terms of devolution. And these are the gatekeepers, as it were, of the funds that are given to them. Do you feel like corruption has taken center stage and is being addressed?
In fact, right from the second day until yesterday, we had a whole session of about 3 hours. We had a whole session of about 3 hours addressing the issues about good governance and accountability. And in that session, we had not just the governors and the senators, but indeed we also had the auditor or the Auditor General, we had the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions represented, we had the CEO of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and some members of the civil society seated at that panel, and of course having discussions with the delegates at the conference. Now, in my view, and I agree with Elder Paddy to the extent that we need political goodwill to be able to deal with the vice on corruption. I mean the vice corruption. And we, over time, haven't seen very deliberate efforts being made to be able to deal with the corrupt in this country. And I agree again to say that part of it could be the citizens' problem, and that is given by the fact that people want services to be delivered. So whether you want service to be delivered within an efficient manner, which is also the theme of the 5th Annual Devolution Conference, we are talking about efficiency and effectiveness and towards service delivery for county governments and of course the citizens. Now, what this means in my view is probably I could introduce a tool which we call the TAPI. TAPI means transparency, it means accountability, it means prevention, it means education, it means enforcement. We haven't seen very good efforts put to the extent of enforcement of the laws that we have on corruption. We have a whole chapter, Chapter 10 of our Constitution, talking about issues of national values, issues of principles of good governance. And so there is not so much effort that is being put with regards to what the citizens need to do, which then brings back the question of education and civic awareness towards what to do when I see an officer getting corrupt. And one of the things that the CEO of EACC said yesterday was that they have a portal within the website. And you ask yourself, if I am in Mandera, for instance, at the corner of Lafay, which is the border 1 kilometer into Somalia, how am I supposed to go into my phone or whatever platform I have to be able to to report a corrupt officer? So this therefore brings in the question of, yes, the discussions can take place. We can have the president making all these grandiose speeches. We can have the prime minister making very good, comments around counties and what counties should and must be able to do so that we can be able to have efficient and effective service delivery with regards to, of course, corruption. But then the question is, if we do not empower the citizens to be able to feel that, yes, as Elder Paddy says, we are seeing people who are, running away with hundreds of millions of taxpayers' monies, and they are vying for offices and they are getting elected by the people. And we are seeing people who are just being caught by police officers around here, or being reported to administration officers, for having taken someone's goat or someone's bicycle, and they are being jailed for more than a year or 6 months or whatever. That therefore presents the question of enforcement, and how can we be able to enforce the systems so that people feel that, yes, I can be able to report a case of corruption and that action will be taken and it will be seen to have been taken. Because then what we are seeing happening, the theory and the practice then will be so distant apart, because then we'll be seeing a lot of talks around the war on corruption, but the action is very limited, and people therefore will not have the confidence to one to report corrupt officials, and two, it will be a motivational factor that anyway, mutadu, even if I seek service delivery in a corrupt manner, the much that you can be able to do is to report the case, and then no action will be taken. So I think that what we need to do moving forward, and this could be one of the lessons that we could learn from the 5th Annual Devolution Conference, that yes, we have all these apex, the decision makers from the apex of institutions, but then can we be able to see action being nuanced within the talk that we are seeing? Because Kenya is a very a good country. We have very good laws, we have very good constitutional frameworks, both legal, institutional, and all that. But why is it so difficult, therefore, to just do what the law says that
what the law says? All right, Kevin.
To just ensure that.
Allow me to interrupt. Sorry, I know there's a slight delay there, but I'll come back to you because I want to come to Samuel Kimeu. And Transparency International definitely has done, I would imagine, has done studies in regards to why corruption has bedeviled us. It's not anything new. It's something that has been there for a while. What recommendations are there from TI in regards to how we can deal with this dragon?
Well, thank you, Michael, for that question. I think I would step back and take the analysis that Elder Paddy had started about the forces within an individual and to connect that and say that part of the challenge we have is that those individuals then connect to each other. So if the evil within the individual triumphs and then they connect to each other and then you form networks and cartels that then shackle our legal system so that it is not able to deliver on accountability. Mm-hmm. So what we are dealing with are systemic issues. Systemic issues that require us to not only come together and decide to work on this very deliberately, but one that requires leadership. And I would say that so far, we've lacked that leadership. It doesn't have to come from the president alone. Of course, he is critical, because it is the head of state. Mm-hmm. The executive is the one that controls the bulk of the kitty mm-hmm. of our resources mm-hmm. and also has the instruments of the state to enable the state, be governed under the rule of law. So he is an important player there. But equally important are the other arms of government, Parliament itself. And I would say that if Parliament played its constitutional responsibility, we would not be where we are today. Remember, Parliament is the supreme oversight organ under our constitutional framework.
So would you purely put it down to lack of leadership that has made us be where we are today in terms of corruption?
Yes, I would say lack of leadership, but also the cannibalistic nature of our politics. Mm-hmm. That when people seek for public office, they don't do so because they want to serve.
They're not serving.
The days of public service, in my view, the way people would go into public service to serve their fellow human beings and to serve their country, in my view, are gone.
Okay.
What we have now are people who are interested in benefiting individually and collectively meaning for a small group of people, from the resources of the state. Okay. And that is the reason why, while there is all this documentation of resources being lost, not being accounted for, we do not see very deliberate action to hold those people to account.
All right, Paddy, I can see you're nodding your head, I think, in agreement.
Yes, in agreement, and also to chip in and expand the horizon a little bit and say that, of course, he's talked about systemic. Right now, we are at the level where we are trying to find out what solutions are there for us, right? In my view, the first port of call in terms of solution is to revisit the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. In my view, and I will be very blunt on this, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has failed the Kenyan people. It is itself a protector of the corrupt instead of slaying the dragon of corruption. Why do I say this? And it is not the people populating the institution. I'm talking about its constitutional and legal muscle. Not many people know that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is not a constitutional commission. It does not enjoy constitutional protection. So the officers that are there do not enjoy security of tenure. Now, the first solution would be to amend. I understand people are going to amend the Constitution to sort out the 20% problem, which we had. One of them is to ensure that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is anchored and secured in the Constitution so that office holders have security of tenure. Look at the turnover from Ringera, PLO Lumumba, what was the other man, and now we have a man of God. But even God will not protect him without a constitutional guarantee of protection and independence. Now, this can be done by amending the Constitution, I think it is Article 15, the commissions, right? And inserting it there as an independent commission. That way, we will be able to deal with that.
But using the same argument, if you look at the office, for example, of the Auditor General, it is protected. He is able to bring up to the surface and say there are issues of accountability at the county level, but that has not stopped corruption. So even if we had officers who are constitutionally protected, they may bring to the fore the issue, but the issue is resolving. How is that solved? How is it sorted out?
Once again, it is not in isolation. It's a holistic thing, integrated approach. EACC cannot act on its own. There will need to be some investigations. And let me tell you, my honest assessment, I've done a little bit of assessment of the cases that have been brought before court. They are poorly investigated, they are poorly documented, and they are poorly prosecuted.
Could that poverty of
professionalism on the part of the
Is
investigation?
it by design?
It is by design, because again, it is corruption. It is a cartel that he has talked about. If we had men and women of integrity carrying out these investigations against the powerful corrupt, and we had the judiciary, which we now have, of course, it is struggling to keep its independence. It's under siege. If we had men and women of courage, of integrity, who can carry out professional investigation, who cannot allow themselves to fiddle with one or two technical issues in terms of presentation of cases before court, then we'd have heads rolling.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe before we move over to Kevin Osido and look at some statistics.
So maybe just a little bit. The other thing that I wanted to add in terms of solution is to ensure effective public participation in planning, in budgeting at county level. Then if their issues are incorporated in the planning and in the budgeting, then they should go to the next level of also monitoring, the people themselves, monitoring expenditure, all right? And then finally, of course, in terms of solution, I believe at the county level, it is high time now that we carried out a lifestyle audit of public officials that got into office. The elder got into office when he was walking in the street with angulated shoes. After 6 months, he's driving a V8.
But most of those things are there within the Constitution and Public Act. If you look at, for example, Declaration of Wealth, it was meant to deal with that aspect that you're talking about. But having those laws in place, having those institutions in place has not worked for us. Question being, the reason why you were detained at the point you were, you had enough muscle to believe into a cause to a point where you were willing to trade your life for it. Do we need martyrs who are going to say that corruption must end regardless of whether they lose their lives?
Yes, we need people who are willing to stake out, to pay the ultimate price.
Okay. May I chip in at this point and say that, yes, indeed, we need martyrs. There will be martyrs, and I can actually tell you, even now there are martyrs. There are people who have paid dearly for standing out. But they're standing out in an environment where they're running against the grain, and therefore they find themselves annihilated by the same system. Coming back to the issue of law, I want to actually just correct Elder and say that the EACC is actually constitutionally protected. And even though there are problems at the EACC, we have people of integrity working at the EACC. The institution itself might be seen to have failed. But the truth is that this institution has failed because of the political environment it is working in. And for us to understand where the failures are, we have to be to do a serious audit, not just of the EACs, but the entire chain. And I want to give you an example. The EACC in the last elections gave a list of people that they thought should not be clear to fight for elections. Remember, this is their mandate under the Constitution, under Chapter 6. That list was handed over to the IEBC. The IEBC did nothing about it. So when you're asking what we can do, one of the things that we can do is actually to make sure that the leaders that get cleared by our institutions to vie for office are people of integrity. If they are thieves, if they are people who have this cloud of lack of integrity hanging over their heads, the system must be able to shunt them out. And the Constitution actually did envisage that. We ourselves, as Transparency International, in partnership with the Mzalendo Trust, Inuka Nisisi, and Chapter 1, under the umbrella of the National Integrity Alliance, we launched a campaign, the Red Card campaign, in the run-up to the elections, to help us achieve this perspective. That campaign has actually won an award here as the best public campaign from the Public Relations Society of Kenya. And just 2 days ago, we learned that we've gotten an award at a continental level for the best campaign from East Africa, but also the best campaign on governance in Africa. I would say that it gives some promise, because it's tough work, because we were threatened with legal suits. We were threatened individually, because you are basically touching where it matters. The moment we begin to touch where it matters, the system will resist. But at that point also, we must have enough courage to be able to move forward. The issue of wealth declaration and lifestyle audits, the president did order lifestyle audits about 2-3 years ago, I recall, and he said that the beginning point was going to be the Kenya Revenue Authority. We are here to see that moving forward. We've seen the instrument of lifestyle audits being employed in the courts very recently and actually being defeated consistently. There are cases you can actually look at, and I can tell you about 3 of them, where the instrument of lifestyle audit was used by the EACC with very good results, but of course in the court somehow the people got away with it.
That seemed to escape. And I want us now to cross over to Kevin Osido, who's in Kisumu. But before that, if we can just look at some statistics, because I'd like to know what some of those governors have to say. I mean, there are figures that show that there are some counties which have been more corrupt than others. There are some where it is evidenced, whether by the Auditor General, whether by the public, whether by the media, whatever angle, that there has been corruption. And I want us to look at some of those statistics before we go to Kevin Osido. And Kevin, you tell us what the leaders are saying. But let's look at that. And according to EACC report released just before the elections, Murang'a County came out first in terms of being the most corrupt, Trans Nzoia second, Mandera, Kirinyaga, in that order. As you can see there, those were the most corrupt counties, apparently, according to the EACC. The least corrupt counties were Lamu, Taita Taveta, Tana River, and Kericho. And of course, the question then would be, why is it that some counties are able to manage corruption, others are not? Most corrupt ministries were Interior, Health, Devolution. Again, threat to devolution being corruption, Education, Transport, and Land. Let's cross over to Kevin Osido. Kevin, you are there with the leaders. We have these figures. We have these statistics. What are the leaders saying about their corrupt counties? What's their excuse?
Mike, what you're asking me is a difficult one. In fact, I remember yesterday we had a session as we were talking about good governance and accountability. At the session, there was a big war between governors and senators, and the question was, why is it so difficult for governors to honor summons when they are asked to go to meet with the Senate? Because the Senate is indeed the oversight body for governors. And Senator Kajwang actually was very categorical. And in fact, he said that as a Senate, they will be able to protect devolution and to protect governors when they are right, and also to do the same and to be able to exercise their mandate as a Senate with equal measure and vigor when governors are doing the right things and also when they are doing the wrong things. And I remember that Professor Kivutha Kibwana actually stood and he encouraged his fellow governors to honor summons, and he said that as governors, they are not masters of everything. And he was challenging them that they have officers that they work with, and that the successes of Makueni County have been those that have been gained by teamwork and, of course, ensuring that everybody does their thing. And after that, during the breaks, I had a discussion with the governor for Mandera County, and the question that you asked earlier on is the same question that he asked me, Kevin. What is the measure of most corrupt and what is the measure of least corrupt county? So, Mike, what I think we need to do is also to break down. When we say most corrupt or least corrupt, what are the measures? And from County Governance Watch, we have a tool that we call the County Governance Index, which assesses levels of service delivery including water, education, health, agriculture, and infrastructure. And after this conference, in 2 weeks' time, we are going to be launching a survey that was done by interviewing 584 people. And what many of these people said insofar as corruption is concerned at the counties, and this is actually what the governors and many of these public servants who are here, and indeed part of the delegates also are the citizens, and they're talking about enforcement. And if you look at counties, they've not been very deliberate insofar as putting in stopgap measures to be able to curb corruption. So we are talking about EACC, but who is doing the work of EACC at the county level? Yes, of course, EACC is a constitutional commission, as my friend Sam would say, and of course under the guidance of Elder Paddy. But then the question is, how can we be able to devolve EACC at the counties and work together with the regional offices of the commission to be able to empower counties and work together with them to not only enact laws, but also to do what we call civic or public education with regards to what a citizen needs to do when dealing with issues of corruption. If you listen to the speech by His Excellency, the former Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga, he was very categorical insofar as corruption in the counties is concerned. In fact, he said that the protection that the corrupt should not sit there hoping that anyone is going to protect them. And I want to challenge the former Prime Minister. Is it therefore possible for us to see him, swiping the same thread with regards to counties that are seen to be his loyal governors or counties that are seen to be his main supporters, so that the same measure that we are seeing him talking about institutions and giving this kind of very good, deliberate and forthright warnings would then also be devolved to the counties that are much more closer to his party and of course his heart, because then I think that should be the beginning point of the war of corruption, and it would also be a booster to this thing we are calling goodwill. Because if we have very high-level narratives coming from the apex and with action that is meted, action meted with equal measure, with the same words as they are spoken, then it will also encourage the citizens to be able to see, to carve their space within which to be able to not only report, but also to do what Elder Paddy is talking about, which is ensuring that monitoring is done. And Mike, it might interest you that in this conference, for the first time, we have more than 300 young people attending auspices of the Ministry of Devolution. And part of what we want to do with these young people is to do what we call citizen vigilance groups or citizen action groups, so that when they go back to their counties and having had the opportunity to engage with their governors at this level, is it therefore not possible that they can be able to go back and not only speak about what they have seen, but also to put measures to ensure that, yes, even as they participate in the county integrated development planning processes and also the budget making processes, but that particular participation can also be moved on for them to be able to exercise some bit of oversight. For instance, if you asked me, as MCAs are oversighting over governors, who is oversighting over MCAs at the county level? Because it is clear from what the discussions are taking place here and from what we can see in very many counties, MCAs are using bribes, if I could say that. And that was part of what the Prime Minister was also saying yesterday, to be able to not only persuade, governors are bribing MCAs to pass certain bills, to be able to pass certain officials.
Okay, Kevin, I'll have to pause you there. I'll have to pause you there, Kevin, because of time. And yes, good analysis there, and definitely a lot happening at the Devolution Conference. And thank you for joining us. But let me come to studio as we wind up. And I'll start with you, Paddy. We can talk about corruption until the cows come home, because this is not an issue that has started today. Let's just have your closing comments and possibly your recommendation of how we can deal with this once and for all, not just at the national level, but at the county level.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Sam, for enlightening me a little bit on the constitutional status of EACC. Having said that, where I see the solution coming is, one, is the staying power, the will to enforce. It is about enforcement. And holding those who are charged with the responsibility of enforcing legislation, of enforcing court orders, to account where they fail. And then we want to find out, why are they failing? Are they failing because they themselves have been compromised, have been corrupted or what? Then the last one, which is to me most important, is that public participation. Citizens must be involved at all stages, and it must be really public participation and civic engagement, real, not tokenism, not the type that you call people to come and rubber stamp what you've already
decided.
Yes, that's where I go.
Mr. Kimeu, your closing comments.
Yeah, I'll start with a bit of a reflection. There are counties today, this is the second cycle of governors. There are governors who are grappling with pending bills that run into 2-3 years, effectively meaning that the only resources they have to make a difference and deliver on the agenda they promised their constituents is 2 years worth. I think some of them have gone back to do audits. Nairobi is doing audits about its spending bills. Meru, Governor Kiraitu saying that he cannot be held responsible for bills incurred by another government, and there's a very clear reason how they were incurred. These are interesting things that we can pick up. We actually need to do these kinds of audits. And I would actually urge the counties to involve the Auditor General's office to do forensic audits of these bills so that we can hold people to account. And in holding people to account, we must do that under the rule of law. The rule of law is actually the biggest problem we have here. So if we enforce the law, we will definitely make progress.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll have to wind up right there. Elder Paddy Onyango, thank you for joining us this morning. As Mr. Samuel Kimeu, and also Kevin Osido, who was joining us from the Devolution Conference in Kakamega, although joining us from Kisumu. Thank you. And that's where we wind up the State of the Nation. But